Hey everyone, this is Harrison Smith with Death House. I'm the director and writer, and welcome to the DVD commentary. This is my first one. I came to this project thanks to Rick Finkelstein and Stephen Chase of Entertainment Factory. And I met them when I was out in Los Angeles doing a screening with my Billy Zane and Dee Wallace film Zombie Killers. And I got to be part of this when they came up and asked me if I had ever heard of Death House. So we'll get into a little bit more of that as the film goes. We got to shoot up in the desert, up in the Badlands, really, of Southern California, up past Valencia. And I wanted this opening, as you can see all the great names, and you can see Tony Todd down there carrying Nicole Sinaglia. And I wanted the opening to evoke Psycho 3. I really enjoyed Psycho 3, and I felt that it got a bad shake at the box office. And so I wanted to kind of evoke this like wide open desert kind of feel in the opening of the film. Nicole's been with me a long time. That's Nicole right there. She was started with me actually in 6 Degrees of Hell with Corey Feldman and went on to Camp Dread, and I wanted her in this. Tony Todd, of course, goes without saying. He's Candyman and beyond all of that. Tony is just a consummate actor that I feel constantly is in the shadow of that Oscar. He really needs an Oscar, and I wanted the film to open with a powerhouse hitter like Tony. And we bring him in as the character Asa, as you can see right here, a farmer. And usually with this kind of film, you expect it to start a certain way. So we're looking at this right here, and that's the black goo, kind of like an X-Files kind of thing, or maybe even Prometheus, except there's nothing alien based about this. It's very terrestrial. And Tony is showing that off right there, and we'll be going into what that stuff is in a little bit, but it is directly connected to Death House. Let's just say that the pipe that stuff came from Death House. Nicole is just terrific. And if you listen to what Tony is saying to her about his former job as a farmer, and he grew plants, he grew a specific kind of plant. And he's talking about the Venus flytrap coming up. Now you think this is going to be set up as some type of sexual or rape scene, but it's nothing of the sort. Instead, I wanted to evoke the fakery of psychic healers in the Philippines and such, except Tony's character Asa is actually doing a psychic surgery on this girl. You can see he's digging into her belly. She feels no pain. She's unable to move, so he has some kind of power over her. And then he removes some tissue, but if you look, the wound starts to heal right up. But the tissue that he's pulling out is actually fetal tissue. What you've just seen, this film opens up with a psychic abortion. That's why he talks about nipping the flower that destroys the plant's energy. He just nipped her flower. He's talking about taking her, of course, to a special place that we call the farm. And believe it or not, folks, that is the setting for the sequel to this movie. Death House 2 takes place on what is called the farm. Now, all those voices that you hear coming out of that vent, they have something to do with Death House as well. There's my name, and there's that awful van. The set designers were terrific in finding if there is ever a van that says don't touch. I don't know what to tell you. I'm excited for the fact that we have Adrienne Barbeau as the voice of the Death House computer. And if you listen closely, you understand that she's evoking Escape from New York. I wanted this to have a very Escape from New York feel. And we got that with Adrienne. Courtney Palm, well, what can I say? I loved her in Zombievers, Sushi Girl, and we got to pair her up in the opening of this flashback with Kane Hodder. Kane's character is interesting. We wanted to set this up to make it look like a little bit like a World War II flashback, except it is not. It takes place in the present day. It's in some type of bunker, and Kane is a neo-Nazi. Courtney, as you saw before this flashback, is an agent, and she has embedded herself inside Sieg's camp. They have definitely a relationship, as you're going to see as the film keeps going. There's kind of a weird cat and mouse game between the two of these people. Kane is just phenomenal. I mean, most of you who have met him at the conventions know he's extremely gracious, he's very kind, and he has one hell of a voice. He has a voice for radio or narrating books. I mean, the guy is just amazing. He's also a great guy to work with in the way of just a lot of fun and one of the pranksters on our set. Always a good time with Kane. Very funny man, has an excellent sense of humor, and from his years as a stuntman, incredible stories. I mean, just sitting and listening to him, I could spend days just listening to this man. If you haven't read his book, if you haven't seen his documentary, please get it. Courtney had to prove something to show that she is loyal to him, although probably, well, I mean, the audience knows that he likely suspects that she is not genuine. And it's here that he reveals his true intentions. He knows she's an embedded agent, and he tells her, "You want me alive." The shot takes us out of the scene and back to Death House to its intake. This line right here coming up was improvised by Kane and Courtney. I loved how they developed their entire relationship together. It was just stellar. And Kane gives us one of the best breakaway lines out of the film. "I will fuck you in hell." There it is. Getting Courtney was really important to this film. We sent the script over to her, and I think within about 2 hours she agreed to do the part, which was great. The prison that you're seeing here is real. This is Holmesburg Prison in Philadelphia, and you may notice the intake part right here, the Central Command area, was also used in the film History of Violence. This is inside the command center. We wanted Death House to have a weird look to it. And that is thanks, we're going to be talking to a little bit to our set designer, Josh Reel. This is Kenny Ray Powell, the former football player, now turned actor, who plays Captain Gallen, who greets Courtney to Death House. And of course, the illustrious Dee Wallace. Dee, of course, is America's mom, from E.T. and even Cujo, Critters, The Howling. Just having Dee was a pleasure. She worked with me on Zombie Killers and brought her back for Death House and patterned her character after Louise Fletcher's doctor, Nurse Ratched. Cody Longo, one of my favorites. I thought an underrated character in Piranha 3D. When I saw Piranha 3D in the theaters, I said, I got to get this guy sometime. He played such a perfect dick. This scene here, I wanted a long hallway tracking shot similar to the intake that Kurt Russell had to go through in Escape from New York, except we have no yellow line on the floor. This leads us to the first facet of Death House. As you heard, Dr. Fletcher tells them, get to know each other. Both of you agents have something called an honors request, and we are heading to see Courtney's honors request right now. Courtney and Cody are the top of the line agents from their academy. We never say exactly what they graduated from or what their major or intent is. However, both of them, for graduating the top of their class, are rewarded with something called an honors request. You'll hear Kenny say it right here. You'll hear Adrian's voice say that the force shields are down. She is allowed to enter a prisoner's cell. This is Agent Boone's honor request. She'll go into this room, and it's not any ordinary jail cell. You'll notice that everything is staticky, and we deliberately wanted a computer generated background green screen look because she is not in an ordinary cell. You can see the wood frame holding up the wall. This is a fake room, and it's deliberately designed for the prisoners. It is a virtual reality illusion. Danny Trejo right there is our killer, and Courtney knows him well because in real life he had killed Agent Boone's mother. She realizes this is the man who killed her mother, and she is in a recreation of their bedroom and home. The static, the seeing the behind the scenes set, like the frames and the holdings, are all intentional. That's Camille Keaton from I Spit on Your Grave. And you see here where Agent Boone has just shot the man who killed her mother. Camille Keaton is not Agent Boone's mother, but you will find out later she looks like her. If you look up at the ceiling, you will see breaks in the set. This is all deliberate. It's supposed to look like a behind-the-scenes set. That mask right there is worn by Debbie Rochon. She plays Leatherlace, which is a tribute to Gunnar Hansen's Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw. The mask was also designed to look like Roman Polanski, famous, of course, for Rosemary's Baby, another horror reference. Cody and Dee are witnessing tape of Debbie Rochon's character, homemade video killing this guy. You'll see the hologram there of Gunnar Hansen. This is Gunnar's last movie. This was footage that was CGI inserted into the film to look like a hologram because Gunnar plays the character of the father of Debbie Rochon's Leatherlace. And they use it to mentally condition. So you're going to see here, there she is. That's Debbie Rochon in her captive tube. They're reconditioning her, reprogramming her brain. They're trying to destroy evil. They're using Gunnar's image, because he was her father, to kind of intimidate her and shock her into a positive behavior. It's here where Dee Wallace basically, and very coldly, which is what I love about her in this, because she plays so against type. I mean, Dee is just such a wonderful person in real life. Here she plays against type, and she coldly basically outlines a very Clockwork Orange kind of scientific program here. It's just terrific how she lays it all out. Debbie Rochon is basically being tortured by the image of her own father and this audio conditioning that is just pumping these messages into her head. Death House is about destroying evil, but ironically, that's not the case. And then we get the pleasure of meeting Barbara Crampton, who is just phenomenal in this as Dr. Karen Redmayne. Barbara, if you know, is from, of course, the Puppet Master films, also as well From Beyond. And it was just terrific to pair her and Dee up. They look similar, both blondes, both with shorter hair, and yet at the same time, both women are diametrically opposed. The best part is, as doctors, Dee and Barbara came up with their own backstory, that it's very possible that Dr. Fletcher and Dr. Redmayne were lovers, and they play off of each other's personality. You'll see that Barbara's character, Dr. Redmayne there, has a splash of red. She seems to be a more sillier or light-hearted kind of doctor with a very dark, macabre sense of humor, almost like a Morticia Addams, where Dr. Fletcher has absolutely no sense of humor whatsoever. She's all business. This confrontation, or actually this introduction between Dr. Redmayne and Courtney, tells us a lot, as you will see later. Now, Cody's character, Agent Novak, is not so interested. And there's something interesting about this as well, too, because he starts talking about other types of conditioning, such as backmasking on old records, and then he brings up the true story of the Guyana cult with Jim Jones, and how a congressman was killed on an airstrip down there trying to investigate that cult. And that's what he's speaking of right here. Dr. Redmayne, of course, says, well, we're not fans of congressional oversight. So Death House runs pretty independently. So it's one of those quiet government programs. And there is a bond between these two women, and we will see later as to why. The VR concept is what's shown here, where both agents are going into a VR simulation of Death House. Adrienne Barbeau's character will narrate and tell us about Death House. These vector graphics right here are again a tribute to John Carpenter's Escape from New York, if you remember how New York City was rendered in a vector style graphic. That's what we wanted to evoke here. So both agents are going into the actual VR movie, showing us what Death House is all about. You can see there are 9 levels, and the 9 levels at the bottom, the 9th level contains the 5 evils. And they all have different symbols, and their uniforms are containment systems. Adrienne explains here how the Death House prison cells work. They are recreations, basically, of a prisoner's former environment. They're fed a steady gas of a hallucinogen that allows them to think they've never been caught, so they can study these killers in their own environment without them realizing they're being studied. So then we show some background here on Cody's character, Agent Novak. He was an agent obviously embedded in the Middle East. We're showing this cut right here. Agent Boone, also her background, her embedding with Sieg. So both agents had pretty rough backgrounds and had to do some pretty hard sacrifices to get where they are. The computer explains all of our 5 evils. There is Bill Moseley, who opened up this film with a great line, "Who weeps for Satan." We'll be talking so much more about these guys later. I mean, Bill, what a phenomenal actor, and could have been one of those cool college professors as well, too. That's what I love about Bill. Then we have Lindsay Hartley, who came from the soap opera world, who wanted to get into horror, and we based her character on Lady Bathoria, the one who used to bathe in virgin's blood. And Balthoria, as her name here, Bathory is Lady Bathory, I should say, is our female 5 evil. Then we have Vernon Wells, most known from Mad Max: The Road Warrior. And Vernon here plays a very repulsive character who was basically a child killer and pedophile. And we'll get more into his character later. And then, of course, the iconic Michael Berryman, who plays Crow. And we'll be talking about him later. You're seeing all of this in VR simulations. That was a VR recreation of how Crow was caught and apprehended. And then Vincent Ward of The Walking Dead. Vincent plays Thile, another one of our 5 evils, and again, seeing him in a VR recreation. We were not going for realism in these scenes. We want that surreal kind of CGI type of look to illustrate on this tour of who these people are. This scene is great. You can see here Sid Haig sitting down looking like he's at some kind of picnic. This is a reference to the Zodiac Killer. However, this scene is extremely important because if you notice, Cody's character, Jay Novak, shares the same last name as a character, Chris Novak, in my movie Camp Dread. What you're getting revealed here in this little Easter egg is that Death House exists in the same universe as Camp Dread because Cody's character is the brother of Joe Raffa from Camp Dread. So the films are connected. Sid is giving a great speech here on why Cody is able to see him and that he requested Cody to be beamed into his prison cell. Sid's character is known as the Icicle Killer. As you saw, he killed these people by embedding icicles into their backs, and then the weapon melts and he's never caught. He was obviously caught, and he's kind of explaining to Cody a little bit about why Death House is, how it works, and most of all, why he's able to see him. He gets a little philosophical here. And what I love about Sid is that he is just so full of knowledge. He has 50 years in this industry, and during lunch while shooting this movie, I just got to sit with him during lunch, and all I said to him was, Sid, talk to me. Tell me about everything you've seen and the changes that this man has seen in the industry. From, low-budget Roger Corman films all the way up through to Rob Zombie movies. Sid has seen it all. and to have the honor to sit for a couple hours with him during the week and just hear how this industry has changed and how the genre has changed, it was just one of the most insightful and educational things I ever got to experience. I love Sid. I'll tell a great story about him later as well when we screen Death House. So that ends the virtual reality tour, which introduces us to the facility, allows us to move around a little bit because we had a very limited budget. So we wanted to be able to show some cool things about the prison and not make it just a small contained movie. Dee Wallace still remains about as warm as a cry for help as her character. I just adore her. So we shot this scene outside the prison. This was one of the very last scenes that we shot on the East Coast in Philadelphia. You can see Holmesburg Prison in the background. And what's really neat about this prison is that it was the location for a number of human experiments in the early 1900s. There is a book called, I think it's called An Acre of Skin, which is all about the human experimentation that took place inside the prison. The prison is still functional. They still use it. But walking through it, it's like stepping back into time. We did some cool stuff here with this guard. This is how the Death House, it's like the first step of Death House becoming compromised. The scene that you're about to see coming in here is a reference to Ghost Story. If you remember the 1981 film with Fred Astaire, what he sees inside of here is a reference to Fenny Bate. That is Kane's son that we saw shot in the opening of the film in that bunker flashback, but yet he's alive. So I wanted him very Fenny Bate-like from Ghost Story 1981, the little kid in that movie. And you'll see here he's jumped this guard, he's ferocious, he's removing the innards of this guard, not enough to kill him yet, he wants him alive, and then placing something inside the guard's body cavity. The first step to compromising Death House. Here's your eye candy, folks. We're equal opportunity offenders, so we have both male and female nudity in this, so turnabout is fair play. However, in discussing this scene, the tattoos on their bodies are important. I sat down with these people as actors and said, look, we do have a nude scene, we have a shower scene here. I want it to be more than just that, and I don't want it to look like these two are just going to start banging each other in the shower. That's not what this is. If you listen to the dialogue, everything is about how they can't remember certain aspects of their lives. And upon entering Death House, both agents seem jarred by what they're seeing. It's triggering things in them. And yet, the tattoos on their bodies, we keep going to this, have stories. And they don't know what these stories mean. They don't remember how they got these tattoos, and yet they know there's some type of symbolism for them. So while we give the audience a little bit of the gratuitous nudity to show off both very attractive actors, there is a story here if you listen. So it's not just about watching, it's also about hearing what they have to say. Cody is the one that is asking her, don't you remember certain things? Don't you remember anybody from our class? And yet she's also asking about his tattoos as well too. I wanted to elevate the obligatory horror nude scene into something more, instead of just having a sex scene or just showing nudity for the sake of nudity. As most people know, the tropes in these movies are girl gets naked, girl runs, girl gets killed. We wanted to avoid all of that. I've always wanted to keep very strong female characters in all of my films. No falling, screaming blondes, none of that stuff. I wanted to make sure that we kept everything elevated and giving the audience something a little fresh and new. The tattoos will become very important later on, especially in Death House 2. The tattoos tell the backstory of our characters. So I'm pretty excited about that scene. It was something that we all worked together, the three of us, also to make sure that both actors were comfortable in being stark naked in front of a camera crew. Courtney is extremely comfortable in her own skin and had no compunction whatsoever of stripping down naked. But we wanted to make sure that everybody was cool with it and that we weren't just making an exploitative scene. So here we have the great Lloyd Kaufman from Troma. Lloyd is just one of those figures I often say, once Lloyd is gone, another small light in the independent film world goes out. Lloyd has just done so much to contribute to independent film through Troma. Here we're seeing another VR tour, and this is all taking place while Lloyd is looking at that compromised guard, the one that was brought in with the hole in his stomach. We'll be talking about that in a bit. This is a great VR scene where both agents meet Dr. Redmayne. She loves the fact that she is an avatar. She is also joining them in this VR world. She's giving the background on Kane, and she's talking about how Kane will be reconditioned. Again, Clockwork Orange. Death House, the point of Death House for me was to show that true evil can also come under the guise of what people think are doing good. That was the whole pretext of the Holocaust. If you go back and you talk to the architects of the Holocaust, take Hitler out of the equation for a moment and look at the doctors and the academics that rationalized this type of extermination. They really believed they were doing good. It's a concept called the banality of evil. Bureaucrats, doctors, very unassuming people put together this systematic extermination. And that's what we're looking at here. Dr. Redmayne believes they are doing something good. She says in this scene, we are excising a moral cancer. Now, both agents are not really buying this. I love that she keeps, squeaking in and out, just that static. It's here where she pleads her case. She says, look, we're doing a good thing here. And I love Barbara's delivery. She's one of my favorite characters in the movie. She's just so classy. She's absolutely beautiful. And yet at the same time, she exudes authority as Dr. Redmayne. She's just terrific. This shows Kane's restraining system. I love this, that these hooks come out of these restraints on his arms so that they embed themselves inside of him. So if he goes to move, he will rip his own intestines and guts out. So it prevents him from trying to escape. The chair is like this conditioning chair where his brain will be reformatted. This scene here is totally improv. I had no idea what Courtney was going to do. She was supposed to just stare at him. Instead, she reached in and she just kissed him on her own volition, which hints very strongly, again, elevates their two characters, that obviously they've had a sexual relationship with each other, which is another reason why he seems fixated on her. We're about almost at, the weird part is almost like 30 minutes into the film, and we get to see the great Richard Speight from Supernatural, The Kings of Con. Richard is terrific here as he gives a tour of Death House. We have Lauren Compton, and we have Felissa Rose from Sleepaway Camp. Felissa's been in a number of my films. Our relationship started way back with Camp Dread. I love working with Felissa. She's a consummate producer, fantastic actress. It's here where we can combine everybody together. There are a lot of cool Easter eggs here, just so you know. Some people from Dread Central have made it in. I won't drop their names. You can find them. It's terrific. Sinful Celluloid is in here. We have so many cool people that just wanted to do cameos. What I love is that we have the hot blonde, okay, Lauren Compton, who is a terrific actress, giving us kind of like the tour here. You would expect her, oh, she's the one to get naked and run around. Nope. Richard here is giving such a light-hearted tour of Death House and how this whole system works. You bring these homeless people in, you dope them up with this heavy drug called curare, and they call it milk of amnesia. And then they get placed throughout Death House for experimentation. Most of the people you see in these scrubs will become victims for the killers in Death House. They match up these people with the killer's profile. So if you see the brunette right there in the front, she may fit a killer's profile. They put her in the cell with him to see what he does. If you look real hard, you will see Tiffany Shepis back there. Also Jan Birch. You get to see him as well too. Here is what is so cool is that Lauren and Richard are just showing people just turned into objects. The nudity is just displayed like they're mannequins in a shop. And it's here where Richard explains, we're doing a service here. We're bringing these homeless people in, we're using them, we're feeding them, and then we kill them quickly. So they have a purpose. That's what they say. This is the true evil of Death House. There's Jan Birch sticking a nice needle into that woman's neck. Richard here is just so proud of what they do. They talk about how they design the virtual reality sets, detailing the props, nightstands. I love that. He says, we have a nightstand, girl. He explains how they recreate the environments of these killers to study them perfectly. Because as Barbara Crampton said, they want to create the largest criminal database in the world. And Felissa also says, nothing gets wasted here. This is, folks, where you find out really this is what the black goo is that you saw in the opening that Tony Todd was taking out of the spigot in the desert. The people are reduced down to a liquefied waste, and it's pumped out of Death House. So what you saw Tony Todd turning on the spigot and that black stuff coming out is liquefied human remains. These people will all be reduced down to that type of disposal. Here's Lloyd here, still trying to figure out what happened to this guy. This is one of my proudest scenes, the Three Satans scene. This is actually based on a true mental experiment called the Three Jesuses. And Barbara explains here what the experiment is. It's pretty much based on fact, that you took three people who were delusional, who all believed that they are Satan, or different forms of Satan, and put them in a room and see if their mental illness will cancel each other out and possibly, ostensibly, cure them. If you look in the back, you can see Beverly Randolph. She's behind Barbara. And I love that she says, you want to go in, they're perfectly harmless, but yet she has a taser in her hand. It's just so great. Like, come on, they're a lot of fun. You can see Sean Whalen, Bill Oberst, Bernard Forcher. These three are terrific. And this scene here really shows a lot. This scene shows so much about these characters, and you can listen very carefully for the Exorcist Easter egg that Cody will be saying in a few minutes. This is a quiet moment. That's what I love about this scene. Horror also needs quiet. And it's here where we get to kind of see what Dr. Redmayne is really tinkering around with. And Sean Whalen just knocks it out of the park. And Bill Oberst, what I love about him is that he just almost has this kind of a playful kindness to him that maybe outside of this prison, was he such a bad guy? We don't know. However, the son of Satan here, who she calls the handsome devil, he's got some issues. I think that kind of sums it up. You'll notice in the background, they have all these different scenes flickering on these giant VR screens. This is all part of their conditioning. That's like a test pattern in the back. You'll see it go green, then some images come up, and then it goes back to green. Some wording comes up, like right there. All of this is part of the virtual reality conditioning of these prisoners inside Death House. And here's our Exorcist reference. Fans of the movie totally get it. I mean, Dr. Redmayne gets it. She likes the joke. Sean's delivery is so chilling, just so deadpan and flat. No over the top stuff until it's time. Then it punctuates the quiet. This is what we wanted, to keep things, on a different level instead of just always at one level of manic and horror. This is one of our quiet thriller moments. And Bill Oberst drops a lot of clues about the background of Courtney and Cody, the agents, saying that they're not insane. Of course, Bernard gets to give the tagline to the film. Zapped. She is just so terrific playing off these guys. My God, I love her in this scene. What's interesting is somebody on the previews saw Barbara Crampton and said we were trying to copy Drew Barrymore from Scream. That is not the case at all. That was Barbara's hairstyle. It doesn't hurt that it coincidentally lines up with Drew Barrymore's hairstyle from Scream, so just another nice reference to Wes Craven. Lloyd's still trying to figure out a little bit here on what's happened to this guy and why he's been ripped all apart. And now we head down to the 9th level to meet the 5 evils. Dr. Fletcher starts to explain the different types of psychopaths. She explains the background of the banality of evil. And this is the foundation of her work. She's trying to counteract all of this. It's so great, too, to still hear Adrienne Barbeau's voice, even going down. The Escape from New York vibe cannot be underestimated in this movie. And they found something, the thing that was planted inside this guard. And they have no idea what it is, but in a few seconds here, it's going to be extremely important. We shot this scene in a soundstage in Philadelphia. The elevator was built to specifications. I love that Lloyd just adds a little levity to the film. We needed some light dialogue, and Lloyd is just terrific. And that's when it happens. The EMP blast goes off from the inside of the building, knocking the power out. All computers are down, and Death House is now vulnerable. They have an hour worth of generator power, and obviously is somewhat shielded. But we know that the power is not going up. This is our Jurassic Park moment, folks. What we wanted was basically a model in the way of Jurassic Park. Everybody arrives to take a tour of the facility. They go on the tour. The ride breaks down. The monsters get out. I often pitch Death House as Jurassic Park without the dinosaurs. So now they're stuck in this elevator between the 4th and 5th floor, I believe. And they got to find their way out. Now the big thing is moving Kane, who is kind of like the T-Rex in this movie. Got to move him back to his paddock. Our set designer, one of our set designers, George, was just fantastic in creating this chair and all these. I used to call him like the MacGyver of special effects set designers. And speaking of set design, enough can't be said about our one set designer, Josh Reel. He runs this haunted house, Halloween haunted house exhibit, like a factory up in Utica, New York. And I can't tell you just the kind of weird, almost like Ridley Scott kind of Baroque detail that he brings. It's kind of like this weird, almost a little bit like H.R. Giger in some ways, look that he brought to Death House. And it's this bric-a-brac of old technology fused with new in a kind of like a weird steampunk kind of way as well too. And he's just the nicest guy to work with. And I met him at Scaricon at a convention where he had a walkthrough display of his haunted house. And when I saw this work, I said, I got to get this guy sometime to do set design for one of my movies. And so the whole look of Death House that you see here, the machines, the dirty machines, the old technology fused with the new technology, that's all Josh. I told him I wanted Death House to look like the place that was probably state-of-the-art, brand new when it was built in the early 1950s, but yet the government just never really kept it up. And so what was going on is they just added new technology on top of old technology, and it all just looks really sloppy, kind of like how the government really runs. And so Death House reflects some state-of-the-art VR technology, but you could almost picture an old dial phone as well too in it. This is great. We bring Kane back to his cell, and it's here where the magic of some of these special effects, I just love this, of how Kane's restraints work. Remember, he has those cables stuck in his belly. They go from his arms into his chest. So he can't really move them all that much. So these guys here are going to unhook those chains from his arms, but they're still embedded in his chest. And you can see what happens here. The chains malfunction, they fly up, poke these guys in the eye, and Kane, the T-Rex, is free. The sound coming from below is the evil emanating up from the 9th level, just reminding us that we still got to get down there and something no good awaits us. And here is where it's explained of, they do have a fail-safe system in Death House. It's a 2-key rule in which if something like this type of drastic situation happens, 2 people activate a gas which will flood the entire prison and kill everything inside of it. The prison is shut down. It's kind of like a nuclear silo or NORAD. Everything is shut down there, cut off from the outside world. And if they have to enact that fail-safe system, the gas will pump through and kill every single thing inside the prison. What's cool about the gas is that it shuts down your body's immune system. So your own bacteria inside your body starts to eat you alive and reduces you to a black puddle, like a black set of, not even a set, a black puddle of goo, which again goes back to the very beginning with Tony Todd and what he poured out of that spigot. So you can see here, they've tried to enact the fail-safe system. The generator is going out. And the monsters are breaking free. I wanted this to evoke a little bit of Aliens. If you listen very carefully to the audio soundtrack of this, you can hear people yelling, they're coming out of the walls, they're coming out of the goddamn walls. That was just like Hudson from Aliens. So they enacted the 2-key rule. Nothing happened. The gas never turned on. Giving the build-up, you can hear the rise of the prisoners. They're coming out of their fog, leaving their VR cells and containment centers. And the inmates are going to run the prison very shortly. That's when he says, where the hell's the gas? Our heroes are still stuck in that elevator as they hear everything breaking down around them. This is a big shout out too right here to my camera crew and Matt Clammer, our director of photography, who totally got this. I wanted so many of the scenes lit by flashlights. And Matt, who's just such a great DP and a very physical DP, where he's great with handheld and a lot of motion. And as you can see in this scene here, Matt shoots fast and quick. That's what I love about him. So we get to go in there with these handheld cameras and just show the violence. And that's what I didn't want everything just so staged and cameras on tripods and sticks. We wanted everything to go to hell here. I mean, if you're going to call it Death House, then you better really deliver. There's a lot of death. These are the prisoners that are the worst of the worst. So it's not like anybody's in here for a parking violation. And this is halfway through the motion picture. So now we can see we've built all the way up to this. And now everything just goes nuts. And this is where the roller coaster ride really starts. So if you look at Death House, I've always described it as, well, it's kind of like a roller coaster ride through the funhouse. The first part is the funhouse, and the tram car is moving, and it's going slowly, slowly, slowly up that incline, and then down. And this is the part where the coaster is now rollicking down and starting our fast run. This is great when they just override the entire command center. Relentless beating and killing. That's what this had to be. I just wanted basically almost 3 minutes of non-stop violence. Because you have to deliver. You can't call this movie Death House and not have it live up to its name. They're out. You can see Kane here carrying the severed heads of the two guys that got their eyes poked out with the chains. Now he's still got those chains in his belly. You'll see that. And this is a very Escape from New York scene. And Kane keeps uttering this line, "Listen to me. Listen to me." That's an important line for him. He wants to be heard. We got him to fall off that railing. We had an air mat below. And the prisoners have, basically killed one of their own, and they all seem really happy and proud about it. And there's R.A. Mihailoff from Texas Chainsaw. And the guy next to him is Kane's best friend from school. It was so terrific to get him in this as well, too. This is very much Escape from New York. If you remember the Kurt Russell fight scene at the end in the ring, where he took on the big wrestler guy. So obviously this guy is the big fish in the prison. He sees the chains still stuck in Kane's belly, like those end pieces. I love that effect. We had an extra. That guy's face is great. We had an extra who passed out when they let that scene off. He didn't expect all the blood. They had the blood shoot up out of an air cannon, and it shot blood 25 feet into the air. And there it is. This is Kane's Jason Voorhees moment. They just ripped his guts out, and yet there he is standing alive. So in this scene here, when Kane is giving his speech about the 5 evils, it's where I told Kane, I want you to give me Jason Voorhees. So watch when he's done with his speech, and he looks over at R.A. He is totally Jason in this scene. He gives him the Jason look. He does the stance and the head turn. And you'll know it as soon as you see it. There it is. This is one of the best effects in the film, Roy Kniram of Soda Effects did this. Watch this rip when he does this. He sticks the fingers in RA's eyes, which, by the way, was real. RA said, don't try to do any gimmick. He's just going to do it anyway. So watch here. When he falls to his knees, Kane actually does this. This is real. Boom. And then the face rip, which was this silicone model. And we had one take. It was a one and done deal. And it was a very expensive effect. Very proud of Soda Effects. I can't say enough about them. And what a pleasure to work with Roy and Matt and George and their entire crew. Just wonderful people. Also a real shout out at this time too to our visual effects artist Joe Lawson of Lawson Digital Arts. Joe has been in the business a long time, worked on Pirates of the Caribbean, The Walking Dead, the Lord of the Rings movie, Sharknado. Joe is the one that gave depth to Death House. So you'll see here, like right here we're in the actual practical set, the elevator shaft. But when we ever look up to the top, that's all Joe's work. That was all green screen, and Joe was able to give us a very, deep-looking prison with lots of long, extending hallway shots and elevator shaft shots. And I'm really proud of what Joe has done, and I love working with him. So you'll see Joe's work, handiwork here. I torture Joe all the time sometimes with these effects because he's like, oh my god, there's so much rotoscoping that has to be done on this. And rotoscoping is a frame-by-frame process, so it's very tedious. So when you just say to a visual effects artist, oh, it's only 10 seconds, that could be 5 days worth of work. Most people don't understand that. So we have a Shining reference coming up here. Cody is climbing, trying to get to the top to get through that door and hopefully get them out of that elevator. And when he opens the door, it's what the one prisoner says. So hopefully in this movie you've been catching all of the Easter eggs between Escape from New York, Psycho 3, Ghost Story, The Exorcist, The Shining, Clockwork Orange. All of these things are so important. Texas Chainsaw, Rosemary's Baby. I mean, we reference so many horror films. And I do consider One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest a horror film. It's a social horror film. Nurse Ratched is one of the most evil characters ever put to screen. And Cody's just about to the top, and you'll hear your Shining line coming right up. Here it is. And you got it. This was all great stunt work by Jay Green, our stunt coordinator. So the fight scene was really genuine. This is all inside the actual prison. And wanted a little deliverance here as well, as you'll see what goes on, because this guy is not just beating up Cody to beat him up. He's looking at Cody as basically his own living sex doll. He wants to drag him back to his prison cell for that. Another shout out to Matt Clammer and his lighting as DP. You notice the lights moving in the background, always insinuating that other prisoners are around. Flashlights moving, there's always something going on. I told Matt to study The Thing and Aliens for the look of this movie. Cody was a good sport here as this guy's trying to rip his pants off. Here it is. I love this part. Down the elevator shaft, boom, and Courtney kicks him off. Courtney is such a great badass in this movie. And she's such a pleasure to work with. Very nice girl. It was great to see Dee back in action again. I often feel, and I've said many times on Twitter and in interviews, that Dee was robbed of an Oscar for Cujo. At the least, she deserved a nomination, but what Dee accomplished in Cujo was nothing short of combat pay. So it's nice to see her get dirty here and be back in some action sequences. one of the easiest actresses I've ever worked with. Just, I can't say enough about her. She's become basically my adopted mom. So I feel very proud about that. Love this chase sequence here with the prisoners diving at them. I love Cody's little light thing there. This guy was great. Les Price doing a little Alien 3 action, coming in, sticking out the tongue at Sigourney Weaver. And then you hear Kane yell, "Listen to me." And then this is a Nancy Thompson from Nightmare on Elm Street line. Oh God, when she does that. It was in Nightmare on Elm Street 3 when Nancy realized it was Freddy when Kirsten called her into her dream. And she realized it was Freddy. She just goes, "Oh God." And that's what I wanted. So now we have a little bit of a walk through the funhouse here. A couple tips of the hat to Stephen King's The Stand. If you read the book The Stand, I believe it's when Stewart is getting out of the CDC and he's moving through the blackened hallways, and there are sick people that have gone crazy from the Captain Trips disease in the darkness. And that's what I wanted to evoke here. That scene, the way Stephen King wrote it, was just so indelible on my brain. So I wanted to kind of recreate some of that here, where they just walk through this nightmare hallway to get to the next area. She's going to try to lead them to safety. So it's very much like a Halloween haunted house. Some jump scares, some screams, all of that stuff. And of course, discovering more about each other along the way. I'll let some of these scenes just speak for themselves. This is also very much of Escape from New York when Kurt Russell, like right here, when Kurt Russell was walking through the bottom part of that theater and seeing all the awful things in each room as he moved along. That's also what I wanted. Probably one of our weirder moments right here coming up. It'll be the last thing that they see before running. So the prisoners are pretty vile. I got nothing. There's just nothing to say to that. The reactions of the actors, by the way, were all real. They had no idea what was coming. I deliberately changed the script on them. So what they read the night before to prep is nothing like what they saw, so that they would actually jump and be scared and not know what they were going to see. This is the scene here which gets a lot of praise from people. They love what's in this room. And this is all thanks to the magic of Roy. I based this scene on a creepypasta story about the Russian sleep experiments, the sleep deprivation experiments of these creatures in a room. And they were once human beings, and they turned into these weird, fucked up skeletal monsters. And so I kind of borrowed some elements of that here to kind of bring it to life. The monsters, when you see them, are real people. They're not CGI, they're not puppets. They're real people. I asked the casting director to please get me very skinny people, like rail thin. So they stripped down nude and had the latex outfit sucked onto their body, like it like vacuum sealed onto their body. Here they are. These are all real people, extremely rail thin people, and it was wonderful. I think it was 2 girls and a guy, if I'm not mistaken. And so what you see are these suits just affixed to their bodies. Now that's a dummy right there. The little infant thing is obviously not real. But I just love these characters, and they were so cold. It was so cold in that prison. We were shooting in April, and their body heat just got sucked out. So we had a warming tent set up off camera, so in between breaks they could go in and warm up. But they stand out. They're just, we don't know what the hell happened in here. And even Dee Wallace doesn't know. She admits, she goes, we don't know what happened. They're here, but they're not going to attack us. We stay here until the danger is passed outside. Kane, of course, the T-Rex, is now loose, looking for his nemesis, Dr. Redmayne, who's been messing with him mentally. And you'll see when he goes into this room, I asked him to do another Jason Voorhees when he flips over the gurney and he tears the place apart. This is Jason. Right here. I wanted to evoke Jason Voorhees. And I love this little repartee between him and Dr. Redmayne. It's terrific. I wanted to build up more between the two of them. The script actually had a few more confrontational scenes between the two of them, but for the sake of running time, it didn't get shot. We didn't have enough time to get it. And I so wanted more of Barbara Crampton, her character, and just the way she does it. She's just stellar. And I love when Kane just plays methodical, not over the top. He is most chilling when he is quiet. Now this scene here, it goes with the mask, obviously, and there's something important. If you look to the right, there's Tony Moran. Tony played Michael Myers in the original Halloween. So what's cool is we have Michael and Jason standing side by side. And of course, the central focus of the scene is a mask, Michael Myers' mask. Jason wore a mask, Michael wore a mask. That's why we utilize that Bernard's character used a mask, because he was an illusionist and an escape artist. All he wanted back was his mask that Dr. Redmayne kept from him. And now she's been made a prisoner inside her own prison and left to the prisoners to do what they will. And there they are. Two of the Satans are here to pay a debt. The monsters now seem to have a different idea about things, and they're moving toward them. Now Cain's Sieg is going to send the son of Satan down to the 9th level. Here's where Dee explains what this black goo is. They're in a holding warehouse where bodies are brought in and they're transformed. She points to the floor, which shows the black stuff on the floor. And the thing is, all of them have been inducted into Death House and have had, that's the black goo on the floor. All of them have this bacteria killing or bacteria enhancing drug in them. So it can be activated at any time. All they have to do is just turn on the gas, it shuts off your immune system, and your own bacteria, your body's bacteria, eats you alive and turns you into a puddle on the floor. These bodies are being almost like cured, like animals in a slaughterhouse, in a smokehouse. So now our heroes are hanging from the bodies at the top, while Cain is below, has no idea they're up there yet. You'll notice the music, and this is a time to really talk about John Avarice. John has been my composer since The Fields for all 6 motion pictures to date at this time, and he always gives me what I want. And I told John in this case, what I really wanted was an Escape from New York synthesizer kind of 80s tone, and John gave it to me, that bump, 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 bump. I can't say enough about John's sound design as well too. The crinkling and all of that you hear of them hanging onto the bodies. John does all of that himself. He doesn't use library sound effects. So he sits with this movie and he creates what is called Foley. And what he does is he actually crinkles plastic bags and all that to sync right with what the actors are doing to enhance that sound and give us really crisp, realistic sound. Tense moment where Cody's trying to rescue Dr. Fletcher. Trying to get her, and then bang. And that was a tip of the hat to Psycho when Martin Balsam goes down the steps after Mrs. Bates stabs him in the face. And again, Kane, although they're glad that they got Dr. Fletcher, and he's not really interested in any of them. He wants to go down. He's not looking up. His attitude is screw it. We got to get to the ninth level because that's the real freedom. And his army, which is very much like the Duke of New York in Escape from New York, is following right along with him. They will follow him into hell, and that's literally where they are going. Now this scene coming up here, we surprised our costume designer, Lindsay, and Cody did something a little impromptu here, and we threw her off. So both agents dropped to the floor to get to Dr. Fletcher, and Cody dropped and he will rip his shirt off. Well, when he did that, he pulled all the buttons off of his shirt, and our costume designer, Lindsay, was kind of like, oh my God, what are you doing? You didn't tell me this was going to happen, and I don't have another shirt to make this right for any other scenes, because the movie is not shot in order. So after this scene, we shot scenes earlier in the film as well, too, where Cody needed a fully restored shirt. So we gave our costume designer a little bit of a heart attack here. But we had to cover up Dr. Fletcher in proper respect. It wasn't fun killing Dee Wallace off, but it was fun to watch her play against type. Again, one of the kindest, warmest people you'll meet, and she played this cold-hearted woman in this movie. There's the son of Satan, and he's making it down to the ninth level. This gave me a chance to show some creepy kind of jump scare moments. Like right there, that's just so cool with the John Carpenter stinger. Remember, as you get to the ninth level, you expect it. People expect almost the ninth level to be very Hellraiser-like, that it's going to be, something that you see out of, a Clive Barker movie. But you'll see when we get to the five evils that I wanted to play against type. Those symbols also are important. And there's the son of Satan entering what appears to be the lair of the five evils. Okay, this scene here, I'm just going to say right out as its director, is total fucking bullshit. Alright, and that's what I wanted. This is a riff on the Tom Cruise Mission Impossible style movies. Look, it was so funny. Our editor goes, their hands would be all ripped up, right? Like just going down there, like that cloth would be ripped up and their hands would be meat. Yeah, I know that. But that didn't stop Bruce Willis. It doesn't stop Tom Cruise or anything like that. I wanted a total bullshit action elevator drop scene. I mean, look at it. You've seen monsters in this movie. Kane Hodder is regenerated. All this other stuff you've accepted without question. But suddenly people are going to get into the science of the elevator drop and say, oh, that could never happen. Like the monsters in the cell can happen. Like Kane Hodder getting his guts ripped out and standing up can happen. Give me a break. This is total bullshit fun. That's what I wanted. So yeah, they land with, she has a bump on her head and their hands are perfectly fine. I'm well aware of that as a director. One of the things that the editor also said was, he's like, Harrison, I don't understand, how can Kane just get back up? How can he just regenerate? And I said, let me ask you something. I said, have you ever watched Kane in Friday the 13th? And he's like, well, yeah. And I said, they never explain how Jason Voorhees can get his head chopped off, which that's what happened in part 4, and yet, lightning, I guess, just reattaches your head in part 6. You can burn him, drown him, do all these things to him, blow him up, and yet he still regenerates and comes back, and we never explain it. And the guy's like, well, yeah, I guess so. I said, so when Kane wears a mask, you have no questions. But when Kane doesn't wear a mask, you have questions. And he said, you know what? You make a good point. It's all about suspension of disbelief, folks. This is not realism. We didn't go for realism. We went for a surrealistic roller coaster ride through the funhouse. And here is where they arrive to go into the Five Evils Den. They've been called here. That sound that you hear, that like choir kind of sound, and these lights coming down This is all the five evils work. It's a siren song to bring them in. There's a reason why Courtney and Cody get there first. You notice that fog disappeared all off the ground, and I wanted that fog to evoke the old Universal Wolfman movie with that ground fog that's always there. There it is. It comes back. Kane, of course, is still on the warpath to get to the 9th level. And it's here where we meet our five evils. This is where I wanted to play against type. That's what's left of the son of Satan. They kind of did a number on him. The five evils are led by Bill Moseley, who plays Giger, which is a direct nod to H.R. Giger from Alien. You can see our five evils: Michael Berryman, Bill Moseley, Vincent Ward, Lindsay Hartley, and Vernon Wells. And it's here where Bill says the great line, "I am God, the great and terrible." He's the man behind the curtain. None of these folks have spikes or nails put in their heads and looking like Cenobites, gooey and drippy. I wanted them to look all normal. Their suits are restraining suits. If you take them outside of their suits, they look like normal human beings. You'd never notice them on the street. Well, Michael Berryman has a very iconic look. You'd probably notice him. However, I wanted the five evils to represent the banality of evil. The bureaucrats and the politicians and the doctors who were the real engineers behind the Holocaust. This scene here is great. Kane knows, I'm just not going to walk into the five evils. It's too easy. In the meantime, it's here where the five evils, they make such a compelling argument for evil. And they're telling Courtney and Cody, you've always been with us. You're connected to us. And Bill just plays this great kind of coy villain. He almost looks like, you'd want him as a college professor. The problem is, all of them will kill you in a heartbeat. But they have their reasons why. Bill makes the argument that good is dependent upon evil, and that the practice of erasing evil is folly. You can't do it. The universe was not created for that. The five evils serve a purpose, and to contain them and to try to destroy them is absolutely against everything that the universe was set up to do. The slow realization between both Cody and Courtney is they were also patients in Death House. Their minds were erased. And now they're coming to grips with that. Vernon here tells him, you killed me. My crimes were indeed terrible. You killed me for my crimes. However, what they're doing in Death House is far worse. I love Lindsay's little lick of the tongue there. She has obviously a thing for Courtney. And Balthoria, of course, would probably just want to bathe in her blood. Cody's look of just complete confusion and realization is priceless. So that's what I wanted. I wanted five evils that look actually pretty common instead of, monsters. Because the real monsters are walking among us. They look normal. Bill's diatribe against organized religion is stellar, in which he says, look, God is perpetuating terrible acts as well, too. Here's a confrontation scene between Courtney and Balthoria. Obviously, they've met before. And now they're coming to grips with that. They're realizing we've all crossed paths with the five evils before. This is all part of what was meant to happen. You can't change the universe. You can try, but this is the kind of result that you get. Very similar to Jurassic Park, when you try to play God and when you try to manipulate things through technology. So now these two are seeing things that Bill is showing them through entrails. I wanted to evoke the old Greek kind of like Oedipus, where the oracle shows the future and shows visions through animal entrails. So they're showing these visions through the death of the son of Satan through his entrails. Michael Berryman is just terrific. What was really cool during this was Bill and Michael and Kane did a Three Stooges hello, hello, hello kind of thing on set. And I just loved it. I turned around to the director of photography. I said, we're seeing something pretty cool here. These people have such a history with each other. They are such legends in this genre. And that's why Death House is so important. This is a time capsule of horror. When these people are gone, there won't be anybody like them again. And I challenge you right now as the viewer, tell me in 30, 40 years, who are people going to go see at these conventions? Who is going to replace Kane Hodder or Bill Moseley or Dee Wallace or Barbara Crampton or any of these people? Who's out there to replace them? When Bruce Campbell and Robert Englund and everybody's gone, who's left? That's why Death House is so important. Kane doing his march right through all of this. The security system by the Five Evils doesn't work because Kane believes he is immortal. But these guys are not. And I love how they're smited and Kane is just allowed to go. His group is left behind. And Bill makes the case for evil here. You know, he says, why are we such terrible people when what they're doing inside of Death House is far worse? I love the style of the outfits with them. We wanted, again, something a little steampunk. No flowing black, trench coats or leather, BDSM kind of look. I wanted this to have a kind of industrial, like a little bit of a post-apocalyptic or even future look. Again, steampunk. And this is great here because Kane plays this as such a vulnerable boy. He wants to get into their club. And they don't like him. They don't want him in his club. We never explain how Kane knows the Five Evils, other than that he studied them. We don't have to give so much backstory to everything. That's another thing in horror these days. Everything must be explained. Michael Myers had a bad home life. Jason Voorhees, the whole thing. We don't always need that. Kane obviously has been studying Nazi occultism. He's been studying these kind of rituals, and he believes he's tapped into the same energy that the Five Evils have. All Five Evils were once mortals. And now Kane is making his case. Let me in your club. But they don't want him in the club. And they look at him with absolute disdain. Michael Berryman's looks are just terrific. He says so much with his face. And by the way, Michael Berryman is one of the most fascinating people you'll ever sit and talk with. Just love him. And now the Five Evils unleash the true power of Death House. They were the ones controlling the gas from the very beginning. They were in charge the whole time. So there's a very Wizard of Oz type of ending here between I am God, the Great and Terrible, which is I am Oz, the Great and Terrible, to the man behind the curtain, to basically clicking your heels 3 times. Courtney and Cody had the power the whole time to get out. They were always part of Death House. And now this confrontation here is terrific. Kane believes this is a test to get him into their club. And the gas is killing everybody throughout the prison, which will eventually turn them into a liquid goo. It'll decay their bodies. It'll dissolve their bodies. Their own bacteria will eat everybody alive. But not Kane. So for him, this is some kind of great test. He's proving to them that he belongs, but Michael is saying no. And then I love this slow realization by Cain that something is wrong. And his face, he looks like a hurt boy. That's what I love. He just wanted to be in the cool club, and the cool kids won't let him. The big question is Cain truly finished? Is he dead? Or is he immortal? Can he come back? I can tell you this, Cain really wants to return in Death House 2. He really does. So we're going to see about that. We don't know. I'm just, as the director, I'm letting you know, it's an idea that can always be toyed with. Look, if Sigourney Weaver can return as Ripley, I guess anybody can return. And this is what's left inside of Death House. The bodies are all disintegrating from the bacteria killing agent. And this is kind of a baptism here, with Bill as John the Baptist. And Cody and Courtney are reborn. You'll hear that gasp like a baby coming into the world. And just like that, they're out. One of the few daytime scenes in this movie. It's nice to have some sunlight back again. I love the chemistry between Cody and Courtney. I love their agents. I think they did such a stellar job together. You can see the choppers coming in the background. And they say, we're out into the world to go get them. Our job is to bring the five evils back. And that's what the sequels will be about. Pursuing the five evils. And we end as we started, back in the desert with Farmer Asa. And you'll see here, he's got someone in his van again. This is Dee Wallace's daughter, Gabrielle Stone. She was one of my stars in Zombie Killers, and I swear is going to be like the next Sigourney Weaver. The sign on this van, you'll see coming up as it closes, the ending shot, is a real sign. So I don't know what the story is with this van, but take a look. They were transporting something pretty bad back in the day. And Gunnar Hansen, who came up with the original story, and I got to sit with him and go over this, do the rewrites, submit the rewrites, and he is the one who gave his blessing to it. Now, you're going to have to bear with me here for all of this. None of this would have been possible without Gunnar and Rick Finkelstein and Stephen Chase of Entertainment Factory. Rick shepherded this all the way through, but also a big thanks goes to Michael Eisenstadt, who was Gunnar's agent, and it was Michael who put together the whole concept of an Expendables of horror and brought it all together. And it was Michael who brought the project to Rick, and then they all worked from there. So a big thanks to Michael Eisenstadt as well, too. But now bear with me as these credits roll, because there is a mid-credit sequence, not a Marvel post-credit sequence, and I'm going to explain what this is. So you get to see our illustrious cast, and again, I can't say enough about everybody involved with this. Here it is. Larry Zerner, who played Shelley in Friday the 13th 3, and there is the original first Jason Voorhees mask. That's the real one, and that's one of our best cameos. So I want to say thank you. Thank you to my cast, my crew, Matt Clammer, John Avarice, Roy Canaira Minnesota, also Holmesburg Prison, and also other people that helped out, including Popcorn Buddha up in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. All these people came together to help us make this movie. Sean Hawes and everybody over at the Holmesburg Prison in Philadelphia, also the Philadelphia correctional facilities. Thank you. Thank you to everybody that was a part of this. So I hope you enjoyed Death House, and we hope for a sequel. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. You can find me on Twitter at HarrisonSmith85. And again, thank you for your support. Get out there, take this DVD, get it autographed. It's a time capsule. Thank you, everyone.